All right, there's a lot of Christians on here, but did you know that if you cause anyone to stumble, you're condemned by the eyes of the Lord? That is one of the biggest sins to do. And churches do it every Sunday. And it's weird. The Bible states the church is not there to have fellowship. It's there to worship his Father. Fellowship is outside. For all those who have ears, let them hear. Can't do that in a building. So the religion altogether is badass backwards. Okay? So that's one. Two, the hateful speech is in church, the gossip, the judging, everything else is in church that causes other people to leave church and question their faith. That person is already condemned in the eyes of the Lord, that has sinned against God himself. Look.
Causing stumbling is condemned by Christ. There is no sin that has more woes pronounced against it. The Lord himself denounces it and doubles a woe against it in Matthew 18:7. The apostle confirms this in Romans 14:20, where he describes it as literally evil to do something that will make a brother stumble. The Lord takes special notice of how people walk in reference to causing stumbling in others and is highly provoked where he sees anyone guilty of it. Rev. 2:6. He shows this by comparing it with what Balaam did. Rev. 2:14. Causing stumbling is condemned by the New Testament. Whole chapters in the New Testament are devoted to the subject of scandal. Matthew 18, Acts 15, Romans 14, 1 Corinthians 8. No duty is more extensively commanded than the duty of giving no offense, nor is any sin more fully condemned than insensitivity and carelessness about giving offense. Indeed, in Acts 15 the apostles and elders thought that regulating indifferent things so as to prevent scandal was worthy to be enacted in the very first synod and church council. Causing stumbling is intrinsically hateful. The hatefulness of offense is apparent in its origins. 1. It is an evident sign of disrespect to God and a lack of the impression of his dread. 2. It is a sign of inward pride and self-conceitedness. And 3. It is a sign of uncharitableness, showing disregard for others and belittling them, as we can see from Romans 14 and 1 Corinthians 8. Can there be anything more to be shunned than these? And you will find that people are tender-hearted and conscientious in the matter of offense and the use of their Christian liberty in the same proportion that they are tender or untender in all the material duties of religion toward God and others. Causing stumbling brings dreadful consequences. There can be no worse effects than those that follow from causing others to stumble. It brings a woe to the world, and Christ reckons it a most grievous plague when it abounds, for it brings destruction with it to many souls. Rom. 14:20. It brings reproach on the profession of Christianity, it cools love among brethren, it begets and fosters contention and strife, it mars the progress of the gospel, and in a word, it makes iniquity to abound. Often, in particular, it ushers error into the church, as we can see from the passages of scripture already cited and from Matthew 24:10-12, where, because many are offended and stumble, many false prophets arise. When we analyze it, we will find that lack of sensitivity in the matter of stumbling has been every bit as damaging to the Church of Christ with respect to her outward beauty and peace, and the inward thriving of her members, as either error or profanity, which have been only the product of causing stumbling. Causing stumbling hardens us in sin. Lack of sensitivity and carelessness in giving offense opens the door to all kinds of carelessness in the person who gives offense. This is because that person's conscience becomes less sensitive to challenges, so they have greater boldness to do things that are materially evil. By this they also become habitually unconcerned and dismissive of others. And although respect to others is not a good principle when it is our single predominant principle, yet it often has a powerful, positive influence in restraining people from looseness, and in its own place it ought to have weight. Experience itself teaches us that once you take liberty in giving offense, things that are materially sinful often follow. Causing stumbling harms the reputation of the gospel. Sensitivity about giving offense adorns the gospel exceedingly. It convinces those around us of the reality of the gospel. It encourages charity and warms love. By contrast, carelessness about giving offense opens people's mouths to criticize the gospel and makes both Christia.
So in other words, those that judged me those that put me down, those that gossiped, those that had lied about me and tried to do exorcism on me in the church I grew up in, and they have passed away, they're pretty much burning in hell. Because churches will not preach that. Wow. That's why I don't go to church. That's why I do not believe in a Christian religion. It's fucked up. They're sending their own people in hell because they won't preach it. Because they're too scared of losing people and members of the church if they did. Pastor told me that.